19 minutes after 7, on to this now. We've been talking about it all morning. Traffic lights. What's to become of the unpredictable patterns we see? One moment, they're shining bright, and 2 days later, an hour later, it's back to chaos. It's like a bad relationship, right? You fix it on a Monday, it's broken again by Wednesday, and no one wants to take responsibility. Ward 94 Councillor David Foley has been putting a spotlight on what's happening, particularly around the Fourways area. We've invited him to highlight some of the problems many of you have been outlining for us even this morning. But also from the Johannesburg Roads Agency, we've got the acting head of Department for Mobility and Freight, Sipho Nhlapo, both joining us. I'll let David go first. David, it's a litany of problems. You've been a councillor in that area and you've been vocal for a while now. What on earth is going on with the traffic lights in Fourways?
Hi, Bongani, and good morning to you and the listeners. Well, I think there's a myriad of challenges, and I think the most pertinent ones at this stage in some of the key intersections are and I don't want to use the term hobo cops, it's really displaced persons, trying to earn some extra money, and by people giving them money, and then they actually vandalize some of the aspects of the traffic light. For example, there's three sections, which is the Eskom supply, which is your controller, which is the large oblong box on the side of the road, and you've got all the small silver boxes around the actual traffic lights. All of those could be influenced into stopping the traffic lights working. So if they're completely dead, we know there's a power problem, and there needs to be possibly an Eskom intervention there. But if they're flashing, that means there's technical support required, one or the other, whether it's the controller box or something else has gone wrong. So they need to go out there to have a look what's going on. And yes, a couple of weeks ago, the teams were out there, and obviously with the JRA taking over some of the traffic lights from the province, just to state that in the Fourways area, your Winnie Mandela, Cedar Road, Witkoppen, Main Road, R55 are all provincial roads. And actually there's a total of JRA just in Joburg is 2,023 signals, and Gauteng roads is about 247. Just in Fourways, Kyalami sort of area, in my ward, Ward 94 area, 124 JRA and 90 belong to the province. But JRA has obviously been helping. But so, yes, you do have power problems, but I think the biggest challenge is the vandalism in some of the key aspects. One of them being Leslie and Winnie Mandela, and the other one also being on Cedar and Fourways Boulevard. These are key roads coming from the north-south on either of these main roads. And unfortunately, people are switching things off, and actually they are vandalizing the various aspects. And that's causing some of the problems, besides the other little challenges we have.
I understand you've had meetings with some of the officials. Is there a plan to make some of these traffic lights tamper-proof to try and protect some of this infrastructure?
Absolutely, there is. Now, the new oblong traffic controllers, they are much more secure. So the guys can't get into those, it's got much thicker steel, the lock is impenetrable, but unfortunately, you've got this Eskom supply box, which requires a bit more intervention. And some of them are secure and some of them aren't. But even the ones that are secure, the guys come and break into them late at night. They chop up the cables from that feed. They just disrupt and vandalize some of the stuff so they can direct traffic in the morning again or in the afternoon. And sometimes you'll see the traffic lights are working, and then all of a sudden they're not, and then later on they're working again. So these are aspects where there's interference and vandalism for their gain.
Gosh. Let's bring in Sipho Nhlapo. As I say, he is from the Joburg Roads Agency, the acting head of department there for mobility and freight. Sipho, you've heard what David has had to say. Just how bad is this problem?
Thank you, Bongani, and to your listeners as well. The problem is very dire, Bongani. We've seen this a lot, more especially in the inner city of Johannesburg, but we've seen this happen in those areas there. We have your Fourways, your Sandton, and areas that will have thinking they are a bit affluent, and there's a bit of more, I think, eyes on the road. But what we have seen is, if you've been the site that David is talking about, let's take Winnie Mandela and Leslie. If you had to go there, we had actually fortified our equipment there. Our equipment is brand new there. We have played with the controller to make it more secure and all that stuff. But what the vandals do now, they are going further away from the intersection and finding the weak spots. And remember now, we depend on Eskom or City Power to supply our power to the traffic light. The intersection is fine in terms of the JRA side of things. But the power that is affected now is from a pillar box from Eskom. So they probably went down more a bit and found a weak spot on that power and then actually vandalized that box. But the impact of that obviously then is on the motorists who are then suffering because of that problem. It's a bigger challenge for us. As we're sitting in the city of Johannesburg as a whole, we have about 194 intersections that are totally vandalized, meaning everything that you can think of in an intersection are removed. And the cost to replace this, Bongani, we're talking in the area of 70 million or so. And that's not the money that the city has, because if we had already put an infrastructure like that on the ground, we want to move forward as a city of Johannesburg. We shouldn't be going backwards and repairing what was already installed. That intersection alone, the Winnie Mandela Leslie, we upgraded that intersection 960k. We put that on the ground there, and it's still not working because somebody has vandalized.
So, Sipho, what's our plan? I mean, are we going to throw our hands up in the air and say the vandals won? What do we do? How do we deal with this?
We don't do that.
Hold on. This isn't the first conversation we're having about this. David mentioned provincial roads. We spoke to the MEC, Kiriboni Diale Tlhabela, I think it was in February. That's how long ago we spoke to her. We even invited a mayoral committee member in the city of Cape Town to explain how they get things right in that city. And here we are, these months later, and the vandals do seem to be winning.
No, we're not going to throw our hand, Bongani. That's not something that we'll ever do. If you look at most of those intersections there, certain intersections, we can hide some of our control boxes under the ground. Some of the intersections, if you take Grayston and M1, we've installed cameras on those ones because of the situation there. And some of these intersections will be having number of different interventions to try to protect the infrastructure. As I'm saying, from the JRA side, in that intersection, our infrastructure seems to be intact. They may still try to challenge it, break. If you look at the poles, we fortified the poles. We've done a couple of things there because each and every area has a different a requirement of what safety elements you're going to be doing. What we're going to be adding a bit more is in terms of the CCTV cameras in some of these. We'll be adding some of the the units will be able to trigger if there's any touch or any the cable, so that we can have response going there. So these are some of the things that we'll be doing.
Wouldn't part of the solution be a zero tolerance approach to any loiterers at and around traffic light intersections? In other words, whether you are found tampering or not, you ought not to be there. Wouldn't that be one of the things that you could do and enforce through the Metro Police?
Thank you, Bongani. In fact, there's a bylaw in the city that speaks directly to that. Nobody should be within an intersection. This has become now an enforcement issue. JRA will build them. We'll build the traffic lights. We'll maintain them. But the number of activities that are happening within an intersection. And
why is it happening?
Because we're encouraging it as motorists. If you're going to buy your bag on the side of the street, on the intersection, if you're going to buy a wallet there, if you're going to buy your sunglasses there, Bongani, we're encouraging the behavior of people selling there. And as more as you allow that to happen, it's an economic activity that is then active. And now people come there.
Sipho, I understand that people might do that. That's a fair point. But we also surely have law and enforcement in South Africa. If those people shouldn't be there in the first place, it doesn't matter whether the public buys from them or not. They shouldn't be there, and yet at almost any intersection, there are people loitering about who shouldn't be there. Why aren't we getting rid of those?
That's then the enforcement arm of the law, Bongani. We need to have our JMPD there, our Department of Community Safety there. There is laws that protect that. And as the JRA, remember we come from the traffic flow part, traffic management part.
Yeah.
We will love this to happen. And we talk to our colleagues at JMPD. We talk to our police at DCS. Guys, come on site. Remove all these people there. Because if we can do that, at least we know we've removed one element that can impact on our intersections.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about 194 intersections where the infrastructure has been completely removed. Just explain what you mean. Are you talking traffic lights? Are you talking stop signs? What do you mean completely removed?
I'm only focusing here on traffic lights, where it starts small. It starts like this, where there's no power supply to the intersection, because that cable is stolen maybe from the Eskom or City Power site. Now they can see that our own intersection also does not have power, so it's safer actually to cut the cables there. Then you start seeing them stealing the cables. Over a long time, a pole will be then removed because now those poles are not being active. So when I'm saying totally removed, I'm mentioning the signalized intersection, where you used to drive and find a traffic light with its head, with the pole, with the controllers. This is the problem that we've been experiencing a lot in the city of Johannesburg. And then this has been affecting us. Obviously, it's difficult if you put in 609 or 980,000 on a site, and then 2 weeks later it's gone. The city does not have those kinds of money. This is your money that the city has to spend, where we need to go back there. And I think, Bongani, while we can put it also in there, it takes the whole village. It takes all of us as the citizen of South Africa. We cannot be pointing hands and saying, if the ship is sinking, everybody in it is going to sink unless we all do something. I
also think if the ship is sinking, the captain needs to also have a responsibility, a role to play here, Sipho. It seems to me, as much as you are trying to do some good work, the city is just folding its arms and watching this fiasco occur, because the cameras take it as a fait accompli. There are people at those intersections. And so what are you doing? You're putting the cameras there to be able to watch them. But if those people shouldn't be there in the first instance, you almost don't need the cameras. You just need to enforce the law.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions,
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.